back on stage soon, just after this quick intro. Well, it's time to dive deeper into the evolving representation of women in the Indian Armed Forces. Indian Navy was the first among the armed forces to open the doors to every branch of the force to women officers in December 2022. Now, this landmark move is in line with the Indian Navy's attempt to achieve gender parity in the forces. It has also initiated training of women candidates under the Agniveer scheme. We connect with Admiral R. Kumar, Chief of Naval Staff, to discuss the increasing representation of women in defense, what it entails, building and leading a gender-neutral force, and women Navy officers in leadership positions. I would also like to invite Shireen Bhan and Parikshit Luthra to take this conversation forward. Before that, we will have a quick look at the AV, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Admiral R. Kumar, Chief of Naval Staff. And I would like to invite back on stage Shireen Bhan and Parikshit Luthra to take this conversation forward. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Admiral, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us at the first Future Female Forward Summit. Let me start by asking you about the journey that the Navy has covered. It's been 30 years since the Navy brought women into all ranks. What is the distance covered? What have been the big challenges that you've had to deal with? What has been the cultural shift that you've had to push forward in order for this to be accepted?
The Navy was among the first of the services to look at inducting women, and this happened about 30 years ago, as you said. 1993, we started the induction. At that point, we had taken the approval of the ministry to open a few branches, a few disciplines, namely law, logistics, and education. And so we were given approval for about 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we said we are okay. So thereafter, the other non-seagoing branches were permitted, a few of them. We started inducting them in 2008. We had the first air operations officer, woman officer being inducted. And by 2016, we had opened it for the pilots in the fixed wing stream. And thereafter, it has been one continuous effort to have it open for more and more branches. So in 2021, we have 3 naval cadets, women cadets in NDA. And last year, we were given approval to open all branches, all seagoing branches for women. And simultaneously, we also commenced the induction of women sailors in the ranks for the first time. So there has been a major thrust to support the Nari Shakti initiative of the Government of India. We did learn as we over the time, as we started inducting and seeing in the workforce. There were a little bit of trials and tribulations, etc. But today I can say that, with confidence that we have come a long way, and we are fully ready to harness the women of our country in the Navy and see the benefit that we can get from having a workforce which includes women.
Admiral, what was more difficult, making those infrastructure changes to your offices, the ships, or the mindset?
I would like to say that for decades, organizations like the military have largely been male-dominated, I would say, or mostly only males used to be in this profession. As far as the officers, the dockyards, headquarters and all are concerned, there is just no problem because we have been having women civilian employees in these headquarters. So that way it is not so much of a challenge. But in the ships and in the combat assets, there is a bit of work that was required to make it more women friendly, because largely it was only males who used to be there earlier. So this required a little bit of infrastructure changes, a little bit of upgrades, and in some cases it was very difficult because these ships were of a different generation altogether. So in the subsequent generation of ships that we are building, we've made the necessary changes. So that is one part of it as far as the infrastructure is concerned. But when it comes to mindset, the mindset, I would say, is both ways. It is not just the organization alone. There are doubts and a sort of feeling as to whether it will help and so on. So on both sides, both on the side of the organization as well as the women. So whether it is a suitable profession for them and so on. But I am glad to say that over a period of time, we've been able to overcome it through sustained efforts, and it's a service which is, I would say, gender neutral. When I look at an officer or a sailor in the Navy, I look at him as a person, as a member of a team, as a shipmate, as a professional, and we rarely see it from the gender point of view. So I would like to say that there is a saying by a military historian called Captain Littleheart. He used to say that the only thing which is more difficult than putting a new idea into a military mind is getting an old one out. So, that is probably one of the reasons why it has taken a little bit of time. But I think it's all behind us, and we are well on the way to integrating women into all roles in the Navy. I would say all roles, all ranks. I mean, that is what the Navy is looking forward to as a vision for the future.
All roles, all ranks, and we applaud you for that aspiration, and we do hope that you cover more distance on that front. But Admiral, let me ask you this, because we've got a room full of CEOs listening to you as well. And as you move forward on this all roles, all ranks aspiration, what have been the lessons and the learnings of getting women on board, integrating them with a largely male-dominated workforce? I think companies at this point in time still struggle on how do you get women into the assembly line, on the shop floor, in manufacturing facilities. Since this is a forum that is all about shared experiences and learnings, I wanted to understand from you, what are the things that you've been able to do to ensure that this is a reality, and what is it that you believe corporates can take away from your own experience at the Navy?
As I said, we look at them as purely as professionals. We train them well, and I think it's the quality of training that matters. We train together, both males as well as women. The standard of training, in fact, the training of Agniveers is right now going on, where the academic part, the physical part, the outdoor exercises, the sports, everything is done together. So in a division, if there are, say, 100 cadets or Agniveers, then a certain number, if it is 10% or 20%, has to be women, from that course. So they are integrated into it, so they learn how to be part of a team. And on board a ship, For example, it is teamwork. And there is no job which is big or small on board a ship. Every person has to know his job. It's very important that, it's like a chain, and the weakest link is what, gives way. So we can't afford to have someone who's not up to the mark. So therefore, a lot of effort is given to training, to competency, to bring them up to the requisite level. And therefore, we find that, in fact, the feedback we got is that many of the women officers are exceptionally good. And the quality of intake also we find much better because they're aspirational and they want to make a mark. So in the intake of especially the officers, we find we getting better material to join, and if your level is higher, then obviously you will do even better. So therefore, our experience has been good, and my advice is that you should not look at the gender, see whether they are professionally competent, and it should be a meritocracy.
Absolutely, it should be a meritocracy, but it's interesting what you pointed out. You're saying that the women who are applying to the Navy for the officer level positions are in fact better quality, because perhaps for them it's their first choice, but maybe for many of the men it may not necessarily be the first choice any longer. Parikshit.
Yeah. Admiral Kumar, we have been seeing reports from the World Bank, from the IMF, and all of them have given this outlook that when you're talking about a global slowdown, when you're talking about a recession, you can't have a situation where half your workforce is not participating in workplaces, in policy making, in boardrooms. Give us a sense, from your own personal experience, what do women bring to the Navy? And any personal anecdotes? Before you came here, we were brainstorming with your staff, and all of them said, if you ask him anecdotes, he'll have many. But any one personal anecdote that convinced you that, yes, we need to have more women in the armed forces?
Yeah, I can tell you a few anecdotes. One, firstly, I would say, in my earlier days, I also belonged to a family who was involved in farming and all that. So during one of my travels, I saw a sight of a woman pulling a plow. I mean, that is really remained etched in my mind while the man is, holding the plow from behind. It just symbolizes the amount of hard work that a woman can do, and we all know that farming is really, hard work. So since that time, it is, remained in my mind. And subsequently, during my career in the Navy, I saw we had interaction exercise at sea, where we do something called the jack stay, where we transfer personnel and stores, etc., from one ship to another, where we handle ropes. So this rope on which the personnel being transferred, called the jack stay rope, was being manned on the other side by the French ship, and they were all women. I mean, this was about more than 20 years back. And since then, in my interaction at various levels, I have seen the contribution of women, at sea. Then, I'm also a badminton player, so, I see PV Sindhu, Sena Nehwal all doing well. In the recently concluded Commonwealth Games also, a whole lot of medals have been gained by the women. They have, I'm quite convinced that they are as good as the men, in the ability to undertake rigorous work or the challenges at sea. So why do we insist, they had to be tough? Because at sea, the sea is our first enemy, because we have to first survive there. And on board a ship or a submarine, the biggest fear is a fire or a flooding. Now, if you have a flooding, you'll have to, lift a hatch, close a hatch, which is quite heavy. So there are no quarters given, because if you're weak, if you're not able to do it, the whole ship will, suffer. So therefore, what we look at is the requisite standard of physical fitness, irrespective of whether it's a male or a female, requisite knowledge, professionalism, and the ability to respond to situations. So that's why I'm saying we purely go by the professional ability and the ability to perform the job well.
Well, Admiral, I want to, again, for people who are watching this back home and to the people here in this audience, and I think a lot of people still question, why are we trying to force women into the armed forces, or why are we trying to force women into the boardroom? If it has to happen, it will happen organically. What is the need for more women in the workforce? What is the need for women in the armed forces? How do you respond to that argument, and how often do you still hear that argument?
I keep hearing it all the time, but sometimes you have to take a decision and go ahead. You have to be progressive, you have to be transformative. We are actually doing this in keeping with the vision of our country. The Prime Minister has very clearly laid out this vision of making equal opportunities for the daughters of our nation. And we are very serious about ensuring that this is taken forward. We are aware of the Government of India initiative for Nari Shakti, and this G20 is just sort of accentuated it. If you ask me, it is not that anybody is forcing us, but we don't want to be left out, or we don't want to leave out that 50% of the constituency who can contribute to high professional standards and capability in the Navy. So therefore, we have sort of opened it, and ideally there should be 50% participation. But I don't see that in any walk of life as of now. So we are aspirational. As our country is looking at becoming a developed nation, we are also moving in the same in step with the aspiration of our country.
Absolutely. Aspiration.
Admiral, the Indian Navy took the lead when it came to the Agniveer scheme and inducting women through the Agniveer scheme. 273 women, or 280, are going to be passing out soon. Give us a sense of the response you got for the Agnipath scheme from women candidates, and also for the post of officers in the Navy. If we ask you about your total number of applications, what is the percentage of applications that you get from women?
When we discussed this, this was about a year back. There was heated debate in the Navy, whether we should take, not take, all that. So finally, we achieved fair amount of consensus, I would say. There were, of course, a few differing opinions. But then the chief gets to take the final word. So, we took a call that women will be inducted, and we are, we're glad that we are the first, first service to do that. We had a target of 3,000 vacancies last year. So everyone asked me, how many women can we take? So I said, well, if you go by statistics, it should be 50%. So there was a lot of, debate about it. They said, no, we may not have the capacity. So I said, okay, you peg it at 20%. We should, up to 20% you can take. So that was the target we set out with. I must say we had nearly 10 lakh applications for these 3,000 posts, out of which 82,000 plus were women applicants. And finally, after doing all the tests, the physical standards, mental standards, etc., we could recruit 274, out of which one has quit. So 273 are doing training now, which is only about 10%, I would say. Barely, 10% of the intake, 10, 11%. But as a first induction, I would say it's quite all right. And we look forward to even greater participation in subsequent ones. For the second batch, we have already had the exam. We've had about 130,000 applications. The numbers are considerably less this time, but this is because of some other administrative changes that we have made, out of which about 13,000 are women. women applicants. So we are quite hopeful that in the second batch, probably we may have a higher percentage of them participating. But if you look at the number of applicants and you see the percentage, it remains almost the same. That is, when we had 10 lakh, we had 82,000. Roughly, I would say 8%, 9%. And now for about out of 1,30,000, about 13,000, again translating to 8-9%. So that seems to be the trend. I'm looking forward to more and more, reaching out to the constituency and telling them what the Navy is all about. I would say very few people know about the Navy. Even fewer know what the Navy does. And I would say even less know about the maritime domain. So we are on a mission to educate the citizens of a country, as to awaken from sea blindness to maritime consciousness. So that's one of our endeavor. So as we proceed on that, probably we'll find more and more women joining the service. It's a very fine service, I would say. I mean, you have an option of, being a surface Navy guy, you can become a submariner, you can fly. I mean, this option is not there in any other service, all three domains. So, and we are also at the cutting edge of technology, the latest in networking, latest in communication, latest in artificial intelligence, latest weapon system. So there is a lot of options, and what you gain from this service is something which is tremendous.
You might want to consider commissioning a Top Gun-like movie, sir. I think all of the work will be done if you commission a movie like Top Gun or something on the lines of that. I think the sea blindness that you spoke of and the maritime consciousness that you hope to arrive at, I think that issue will be solved. Thank you very much, Admiral, for joining us here today, for taking us through the efforts that the Indian Navy is making to ensure that you move closer towards the goal of gender parity. It is a start. It's an important and a significant step. And thank you very much for sharing your journey and your experience. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief of the Naval Staff, a big round of applause for him.
Let me thank the organizers of this event, the CNBC and all of you for, for really looking at the future female forward. So I think that's the way ahead. When we look at Amrit Kal and when we look at the nation becoming a developed one by 2047, the Navy is looking at becoming a completely Atmanirbhar Navy by 2047. So that is our aspiration, and we are working towards it. And therefore, in that, we want to have adequate representation of women. Right now, we are at about 5.4%. Let's hope it reaches at least 33% or so. And the icing on the cake will be if there's a woman Navy chief sitting here and being interviewed by you.
Well, more power to that, and we do hope that there is a time in the near future where we will have a woman at the helm of either of the armed forces, and we look forward to that. Admiral, thank you very, very much for joining us here. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.
Admiral Kumar, if we can just request you to hold on for a second, if we can get our armed forces personnel, we felicitated today, if we can have a quick photograph with them on stage.
But this is a picture that will inspire many. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
All right, if we can have Shruti on stage for our next session, next felicitation.
All right.